And we're on. Welcome back to the Lads Beer Club podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by a man on a very similar journey to me, actually. Our Instagram page is crossed and we got chatting from there. John, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Marco. How are you?
Yeah, very well. Just, I think, adjusting to the new norm of life in lockdown, like many people are, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even a new norm, is it? It's like sort of regular norm now. But it's weird, and I think it's getting on top of me a bit. But it's just trying to plod on, isn't it? Hoping for the best in the next few months.
Yeah, I'm very similar to you. I'm just trying to keep busy, trying to keep your mind off I suppose. It's hard to call it isolation because I've got my wife and my kid in the next room, but it does feel like a form of isolation, doesn't it?
Well, you start to miss all the normal things, like the things that you took for granted before. Like I'm a little bit sort of introverty, so I'm a bit like I don't mind staying in, and I quite like my own space. But I miss like going to coffee shops and going to like restaurants and like even like stuff that I never did, like going to the cinema. Just I don't know. It's just the norm. It's really weird. But yeah, looking forward to hopefully doing it all again.
Yeah, it's one of them things where when you can't do something, you really want to do it.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
it's just like when you somebody else's food always tastes better when it's not yours. I think it's a bit it's a bit like that.
Do you know, it's weird when I grew up, I always used to want everybody else's like magazine or newspaper and stuff like that. It's probably a bit of that.
Yeah. So look, John, one of the first things we always do is have you got your round in for this evening?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've got a Whitstable Bay. I've never had it before.
Whitstable Bay.
Yeah, it's an IPA. I've got into IPAs over lockdown. So
really,
yeah,
I'm still stuck on the course. I've been on the course since I started this, and I deviated once and woke up with a stinking headache on the Peroni. So I've gone back to the course, the Coors Light.
Okay. Yeah, Coors Light's lush. I like Coors Light. Yeah.
Are you a big drinker, John?
No, not really.
No.
I like the odd beer, and I like when I drink properly. When I, in the old days, and when you have a few, I'm a bit more of a vodka drinker, a bit more of a spirits man. But I do like a beer just chilling. It's just like it's difficult because 2 or 3 and it's just too much, so it's tricky.
So let's dive straight in, John. So let's go straight back to the beginning. Okay. Growing up, what was your life like with your family, with your dad? Was your dad around? Let's start there, mate.
Cool. Yeah. I had I guess, kind of comparatively speaking, fairly decent upbringing. I guess very, had most things we wanted, all that kind of thing. My dad was around for majority of it. Mum and dad split up when I was a teenager, 13, 14. And then they moved away when I was about 15, 16. But no, life was good-ish. It was one of those situations where I kind of took it all in my stride. I enjoyed it as a kid. But looking back, it was kind of one of those situations where now I know a bit more about it all. Now I've been a bit more kind of retrospect and a bit more kind of, I've learned a lot about things. Maybe it wasn't quite as nice as I thought it was. It was quite disconnected emotionally. It was quite, I guess, kind of stereotyped. It was like, crack on, do what you need to do for yourself kind of thing and fend for myself. And at the time, I think I really liked that. I was kind of, really wanting my independence and all that kind of thing. So it's quite nice that I was given it kind of by proxy. But yeah, looking back, I wish I'd had things slightly different, I guess. As far as my dad's concerned and my relationship with him, it was a bit of an odd one, really, a bit of a roller coaster. Growing up, my brother was a big footballer, like top footballer. When we moved down here, because we were originally from the northeast, from Newcastle, and he was doing really well. And my dad didn't really care about my football, because at the time he was so good that it didn't matter how good I was. He was doing really well. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of got forgotten about a little bit. And then my brother went off the rails a bit and didn't really go anywhere with football. And around the same time as that happened, I started to do quite well. So my dad kind of slipped back in a bit, and we had a bit more of a relationship around that. But it was always a bit standoffish with regards to like, he wasn't very good at giving me praise, stuff like that. It was more a case of if I did something wrong, he was happy to point it out so I could, know I did it wrong kind of thing. And but it wasn't a kind of. I was always kind of fighting for him to sort of like give me some silent judgment of happiness. Do you know what I mean? It was quite a weird one. And then when he moved away and stuff, it was kind of like, I just kind of thought to myself, look, this is the best thing for him. This is what he wants. And obviously I care about him. So yeah, fine. We'll make a relationship. We met up. We used to have season tickets to Sunderland. We're Sunderland fans, which is a bit harsh at the moment. But yeah, we used to have season tickets. And even though he moved away, he used to drive down, pick me up, and we used to still go up every week or every other week. And that was still something we shared, and we still share it now, obviously. But no, in my adult life, starting into my adult life, we just kind of didn't have anything to do with each other for a long period of time. And then we reconnected, I guess. I don't know if you're coming onto this, but we reconnected, I guess, properly about about 10 years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And yeah, we've got a new relationship, what I call a new relationship now. We've kind of got a really good friendship where it's kind of like a bit more equal than it used to be. Which is different at times because I think it's hard for him to sort of always treat me like that. He still sees me as his son, and he should talk to me like a son kind of thing. But I'm mid-30s, and I think majority of the time I think he finds it much easier just to see me like another bloke in the pub. Do you know what I mean? So, and from my angle, I quite like that because I want a relationship with him. I care about him, and he's given me no reason to hate him. He's given me no reason to sort of despise him. He's only wanted what's best for me the last few years, at least, and wants to be in my daughter's life, wants to spend time with us. So for me, it's great. It's just kind of keeping it on the right terms for us all, really. And I'm more open than ever to sort of just speak to him about it if anything did arise. So yeah, it's good. It's better than it was.
Yeah. Do you think the way your dad was with you growing up has shaped the way you've become a father?
Yeah. In lots of ways, in a positive way, actually, because I try and take everything a bit positive. I try to take everything as like, even if it's something that's bad that's happened, I try to turn it into a positive. And, what I remember about our relationship as a kid when I was really small, what I think about when I think about it is that's not what I want with my daughter. That's not what I want as a dad. I want to be more connected. I want to have that emotional relationship where we know how each other feels and we're happy around each other and we like to spend time together. My dad was away a lot with work, and when he was back from work when we were really small, he was a fun bloke to be around, and he was happy to do stuff with us. But there were real times where I remember quite distinctly me, my brother and my sister having to sort of occupy ourselves because he just didn't want to do anything. He was relaxing. He's traveling a lot for work and knackered. He just wanted to relax. So, and at the time you sort of justify that and kind of go, that's all right. It's the way it is. But I'd have liked to have spent more time with him, I think, and had a better relationship. So the way I look at it from a shaping my parenting kind of situation is I want to do the opposite as much as I possibly can and be around as much as I can. And then there are some good things I do take from him, in a sense of when he was in his caring phase, he's a right sop. He's a proper soppy guy when he gets into it. And I think I'm really soppy with my daughter. I think I'm proper full on, and I look at some of my mates with kids, and I just think they're not quite as like girly and soppy as I am, as a dad. So, and I love it. I kind of love it. I kind of don't care. I just to me, it's like she's an important thing. My daughter, she's a big important thing in my life. I should show her that by affection. Do you know what I mean? I don't see why you shouldn't. We're in 2021. It's not the 50s or the 60s or whatever where you can be frowned upon for showing affection or whatever. I don't know. I couldn't care less what people think. So yeah, I do think it shapes me positively. Probably not from a copying point of view, but shapes me because I'm shrewd enough to look back and go, I don't want to do that. I don't want that to end up the same as what happened with me. So yeah.
Yeah, very similar to you. I've said this a couple of times. I didn't really have a relationship with my father at all, and still don't to this day.
right.
and becoming a father, it's very much, I don't want my child to grow up not having a kid. Not having a father, because growing up, I very much noticed that I didn't have a dad. I would look at my friends, and I would go into football practice with the dads and doing all these things that you would normally do with your dad, and you sort of look around and it's like, oh yeah, he's not here. So that very much for me was the driving force of, look, I can't allow my kid to go through the same, so I'm going to try and do everything that he didn't do and do it better.
Yeah, it's great you can turn it into positive, isn't it? It's kind of one of those things where it really can make you horrific, or it can make you a great person. And I love that we share that in a way, because the work that I do and stuff like that, I do come across a lot of people, young people as well, probably younger than us, probably not learned it yet, but younger lads that have become dads, and all they know is what they had growing up, and they can't reflect enough to steer away from it, and they look at it and they're the same. It's just repeating the cycle, and it's quite scary. So it's good that we can look on the other side of it.
Yeah, but I do think that comes with a certain sense of maturity, because I think if I'd had children, or maybe yourself, if you'd had children at a much younger age, who knows? I think I look back at myself at 20, 21 and think I'd have definitely done it differently than I am now at 32 when I had Leo. So
I mean, even if I was 31, I think I'd have been a terrible dad. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them where, I definitely have to be ready emotionally.
Yeah.
So
2 brothers and a sister. Was that what your family situation growing up? Is that?
Yeah, there was me. I had 1 brother and a sister, so there's 2 lads in the last year. So,
Okay. Growing into adulthood, was a family something that you always wanted to have? Did you know you want to have kids?
Do you know, I've always loved kids. I've always kind of wanted to work with kids, wanted to, do things with kids in a sense of jobs and things like that. And I've always been that cool uncle, everybody's mate who's like really awesome with their kids kind of thing. And, always making all the ladies kind of go, oh, he's so good with the kids kind of thing and all that kind of thing. I used to be that guy. But ultimately, I was always the guy that was really pleased I was handing it back. Do you know what I mean? Because honestly, like I said, up until my 30s, I was kind of like, I was either not settled down, or if I was settled down with a partner, I was more thinking, kind of just like it the way it is, just me and her. But I was always open to it. And then when I met my wife, I was in a frame of mind where I was like, don't care either way. Like, if I have kids, great. If I don't, we love each other. It's amazing. Let's just have a nice life. But my wife wanted kids, so we were both like, yeah, let's do this. I wanted to have kids too. So I guess I've always had a pretty open mind about it. But when I speak to people, when I spoke to people back then, like people who are like never having kids, never ever having kids. And then people who are like, I want 10 kids. Do you know what I mean? Like, honestly, when I was speaking to them, I was always a bit like, I don't get it. I don't get why you feel so like extreme about this. Like, this is such a big thing. You shouldn't have an extreme thought process. You should actually just relax a bit and let it sort of come to you. Not like fate. I don't really believe in fate, but you should relax and sort of let that sort of timing happen with regards to your own like ability to do it. So now I kind of know why I was like that, because I just wasn't ready, and I was thinking maybe I will or I won't. And now I look back, I can understand those extreme thoughts, because I absolutely adore my daughter. And if I knew I was going to get her as a kid, I'd have probably, like you said, I'd have probably like been really excited and done it 10 years ago. Do you know what I mean? It's like, maybe that wouldn't have been right. So yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, that's a bit of a round the house answer, but I was always kind of on the fence, to be honest, on the fence.
Right. I myself always wanted to have a big family. My wife didn't want any kids. So not
really?
at all. Yeah, so I really had to strong arm her into having one.
Oh, God.
She used to put the blockers in place. So it was like, at first we used to live in a rented apartment, and it was like, we need to buy a house, then we need to get married. and then we can have a kid. And I'm like looking at that thinking, I'm miles away from getting married. I'm miles away from having a kid. So like, systematically,
we had a similar thing. My wife, like she isn't like staunch Catholic, but part of her family are quite Catholic, and it was one of those things where like we had to do it right, if you know what I mean, like traditional. We had to get married, and then we had to have kids, etc. And I'm a little bit older than my wife, so when we sort of unmarried, I was sort of saying to her, you know, like I want to have a kid before I'm 35. And she was, so obviously we had my daughter 2 years ago. So she was 28. She's probably going to kill me for that, but she was 28. And like, that's probably wrong. It felt a little bit rushed. I don't mind saying that. I think she did feel a little bit rushed because of that. But, you know, I kind of just desperately wanted to have a kid as soon as we got married because of that traditional sort of like barrier that was put in place. Yeah. So I can totally relate, actually. Have you got a big family like beyond your family then, like brothers, sisters and stuff like that? Like,
yeah. So, so obviously I mentioned I didn't know my dad. So just with my mum growing up, I had 2 sisters and a brother. Right. But my dad also has, well, get this right, 3. So my dad has 3 boys and a girl. So I've got 2 brothers and a sister on my dad's side as well. Wow. So yeah, fairly big family. And then
do you all get together? Do you do anything together? Like, do you get together or not? No,
not really. No. So my one of my brothers on my dad's side, I'm really close with. We're like best mates. We do a lot together. My sister, who is the guy I just mentioned, that's his direct sister. I have a semi relationship with her. But then we have another brother that I don't really have any contact with at all, from a completely different family. But then on my mum's side, I'm very close with all those guys.
Yeah, cool. That's really good.
Yeah, so for me, I sort of wanted to have a fairly big family. My mum was adopted as well growing up, and she was adopted into a family of 8. So again, 8 brothers and sisters, so 8 aunties and uncles. Growing into my family, it's about 8. So it was like, I've managed to squeeze out 1.
Do you think you'll have time to work on your wife a bit more? Is she loving motherhood, or
she loves it? Yeah, don't get me wrong. But he is testing. Like he is a testing child, and I don't know if I was a betting man. I'd say never.
Really?
Yeah, never.
Is that from you or from her? Is it from you or from her?
I'd have another one tomorrow.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah. She's like if I asked her now, she'd say, "I'm done. That's it."
Really? That's fairly unique, and in a good way. You know, everybody's different, but like the pressures for women these days, once they've had a kid, you know, it's a well-known thing that's quite natural, really. You know, once they've had a baby, the hormones, you know, they completely change and they become massively maternal. And most of the time, women really want to go straight back into it. Yeah. So that's really interesting. I mean, I haven't come across many women in her situation where they're like, no. They're like, fair play.
Yeah. So me, I would definitely, but I don't. Unfortunately, I think that's a non-starter. But which is also why I was so desperate to have a son. Yeah. Because you know, I always wanted to have every man wants a boy, right? I think. Imagine, you know, you want to be a footballer, you want to do all that sort of stuff with them. So when we found out we were having a child, I was just praying to the gods that it would be a boy.
I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like I totally get where you're coming from. Like having a lad would be ace. And there was a part of me when I was younger, I think I was massively arrogant as a kid, and that sort of bleeding through to adult life. I was like, "Oh, a little me, that would be amazing." Yeah. But now I've got a daughter, and how easy she's been. Not easy all the time. She's a toddler. She's hard work. Do you know what I mean? But the easy sides of things, having a girl and being a girl dad, so far outweigh the potential like negatives of having a boy. So like, I've got mates that have got boys. I've got mates that have got girls. All I ever really hear from the mates who've got girls is that they're really happy they've got girls, because all they know and all I know from the mates who've got boys is that it's just a nightmare having boys. Do you know what I mean? So, but then again, having said that, all of my mates who have girls are or were desperate for a boy. You know what I mean? Like, to sort of complete the pack. So when people are asking me, quite rudely as they do, and you might ask me this, but like, you know, when people are asking me like, are you going to have another kid? I'm always a bit like, you know, if we do, we do. If we're obviously thinking about it, all that kind of thing. And then they say, oh, what would you want to have? And I'm like, do you know, like, massive part of me thinks another girl would just be ace, because like things have been so smooth with my daughter. But then another massive part of me is like, oh, it'd be ace to have a boy and a girl, wouldn't it? Like, just to complete the set kind of thing. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm so like, there's just so many pros and cons in play. It's like, I don't know.
I've got a friend actually from your neck of the woods, Lincoln, who is he had 3 girls. And then when I had my boy, every time I'd post something on like Snapchat or whatever, he'd message me saying, "Oh, I'm so jealous. I want a boy." And I'd say to him, "Just have another, mate. Try it." And he's like, "I can't risk it. I just can't risk another like 4 girls." He said, "I can't do it." But he did. He risked it, and he got the boy on the 4th go.
Thank God for that! Thank God for that! Imagine that. There's a lad I know who has 7 boys.
Wow.
And you know, he was telling me the story because I had to ask him. He was telling me the story. At about 5, they almost stopped completely, but they were trying. They were trying for the girl, and then they stopped trying for the girl. And actually, the 7th was not a mistake, but kind of not really planned. But 7 boys of varying ages. I mean, he's a hero in himself. He's actually a really great men's mental health advocate, actually, that I've come across. He's doing some really great work and become a really good friend. But and then there's the lads that I know that I've just been talking about who have girls. One of them has had the snip and one of them hasn't. And they both regularly tell me, you know, if you have another kid and you have a boy, I'm disowning you. I don't want to be mates with you anymore, because like they're just so jealous that I've got potential to have a boy when they're both like stuck with their girls. Do you know what I mean? So it's fun. It's a funny one. I think blokes are weirder with this than women, aren't we? We're like, we have so many thoughts about it, whereas I think women are a bit more, I don't know, they're a bit more like, we don't care kind of thing. That if it's a boy, it's a mummy's boy. If it's a girl, it's a little me kind of thing. So I don't know. I'm embracing being a girl dad, though. I really like being a girl dad. It's cool.
I think the concern, not to put it on you, but I think the concern for me having a girl is when they grow up.
Oh, God. Mate, I'm already there. It's scaring me every day. She says stuff about, she's 2 years old. She says stuff about the boys at the childminders, and I'm like, what? Ollie said what? Do you know what I mean? Like, Ollie tried to kiss you? It's like, no, it's like, I don't know. I've got it all to come. I know I have. But I guess I'm sort of clinging to the fact that if I have this great relationship with her, all right, she isn't going to tell me everything because I'm a bloke, but hopefully she'll be quite open with me about it, or bring me into the conversations a bit, and I can help her to just steer herself to decent blokes, you know what I mean? And not have to worry. But no, I am worried because she's so, I know every parent says it, but she's so beautiful. And like, everybody tells me she's beautiful all the time. And I'm like, look, I hear you. I know she's beautiful, but stop reminding me, because in 10 years time, 12 years time, it's going to be really difficult for me to deal with if she stays this beautiful. But you know, the big thing for me when it comes to having a baby boy is the willies. The willies weeing everywhere. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know exactly what I mean, probably because you've got one. But like, this is when it comes to nappies and stuff, she's so easy most of the time. Do you know what I mean? It's so easy. It's weird, but it's easy. Do you know what I mean? Whereas a little todger, man, it's like,
we've had a few accidents with wee flying over your shoulder and all sorts of stuff.
That's all I hear about from people who have lads is just the wee cannon. Do you know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah. So, John, moving forward, how long was you with your partner, wife, at this point before you had children?
Oh, that's a good question, because I'm rubbish with dates and stuff and years. I think so. She's 2 and a bit. We've been, oh God. I think we were together 5 years. 5 years,
okay.
4 or 5 years, something like that. We were married for 1 or 2. God, I'm so bad at this, and it's only a few years. But yeah, basically, we've been together 7 years in total, and my daughter's 2. So yeah.
So how did she break the news?
Well, my wife.
Yeah.
So it's a weird one actually. Well, it was a few years ago now. We actually had snow, which obviously snow's happening now. We had really bad snow, and we got snowed sort of in. We couldn't get into work and stuff, so we were working from home a little bit, which is weird because that was a novelty back then. But yeah, we were working from home, and my wife was a little bit like ill, like just really tired and just like feeling really like ropey. We went to the doctors, obviously in our village, and sort of walked through the snow. And the doctor basically was like, "Just going to do a pregnancy test." And we were just like, "Well, we kind of starting to think that this might be the thing." Do you know what I mean? And the pregnancy test confirmed it, and we were a bit like, "Cool," kind of thing. It was just a bit kind of, but it's without being too crude, it happened really quick when we started trying. So it was kind of like the shock was more because we hadn't really given it a chance to really sort of try, if you know what I mean. It was like it's just really quick. So we were like, told by the doctor, sound done, brilliant. Go get yourself some ginger and stuff for the nausea and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it was just a case of like, shit, here we go. Appointments and trying to sort our lives out a bit, and money and renovations and all the kind of things you need. It was mad, but
it was nice. What's life like for you at that point? Before building up to that,
it was all right. We were ready because, like I say, we were trying and we were kind of thinking about what we do to the house and stuff. So it wasn't like massively revolutionary, shocking. It was kind of like we were trying. We knew we wanted a baby sooner or later. Like I say, it was just a little bit of a rush because we didn't have time to spend months trying and thinking about it longer term. But then I think, we also kind of escaped the worry, because I think a lot of couples will worry if they're trying for a long period of time and not getting anywhere. We were just gifted it straight away, really, which is really good. But no, as far as life goes, we were both in decent jobs. We both kind of knew that we were going to be okay with regards to having a baby, I guess. And it was just exciting. It was just nice, which is a good story to tell, really, rather than trying to find negatives. It was just really cool. It was good.
Yeah. And the build up to the day was how was that? Any problems throughout the build up?
Yeah, a little bit. My wife had gestational diabetes, so we had months of kind of her trying to stay active, and months of trying to sort of like look at diet and all that kind of thing. And because of that, we knew that if she went to term, she would be induced because of the gestational diabetes. You can't kind of go over term. Okay. So we kind of had a semi-plan of what would happen leading up to it. And I guess really it was just kind of the standard thing of she was huge, she was struggling, she was big and she was tired. And we kind of almost had everything ready. Everything was cool in our little house that we had at the time. And it really, in a way, again, because it went to term, it was kind of giving us the time again to not have to be shocked and rushing into hospital. We were kind of ready and prepared. I say ready and prepared because you're never really ready and prepared, but we were as prepared as we could be, I guess.
Did you do all the antenatal classes before the pregnancy? Yeah. You did?
Yeah, we did. And do you know, I really enjoyed it. I really liked them. We had really great antenatal classes, actually. We went to, you get your sort of offerings of different things. We found a really nice private one that somebody was doing, similar sort of price to the normal ones that were offered by the NHS. And we went along to it. We really enjoyed it. It was really great. Met some great people. We actually met some great friends from it that we stayed friends with, which is obviously a massive social boost to antenatal classes, because you're so weirded out and sort of fearful about becoming a parent and stuff, that finding an opportunity to sort of like meet people who are going through the same thing as you is fantastic. So yeah, I made a few friends, and we also did hypnobirthing. So do you know hypnobirthing? Do you know what I mean?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So basically, hypnobirthing was we downloaded. We went on this online portal for this hypnobirth, and we paid for these sessions. hypnobirthing is basically a way of reframing your mind and kind of like trying to take away all the fear and all of the anxiety about becoming a mum, becoming a dad. It is very similar. The reason it's called hypnobirthing actually is because it's very similar to hypnotherapy practice with regards to mental health issues and traumas and stuff like that. It's about telling you more about what's going on so you can understand it better and giving you hints and tips of dealing with those things that are going on. So really, it's not like, you've not got Paul McKenna there with a watch in front of your eyes kind of thing. It's not hypnotizing you. It's just trying to tell you a bit more about what it is. And lots of breathing techniques, lots of really great kind of things to help the mum to get through the sort of period of giving birth. So again, something we really enjoyed, something I enjoyed to a point. It was a little bit boring at times, not going to lie. But me and my wife got something from it. So it was all good, I guess.
We missed antenatal. So we
oh, did you?
So, yeah, not by our choice, but weirdly. So the first one we had booked in with the NHS, we turned up. Waiting room was full of parents, like it's supposed to be, and someone came out and was like, "Oh, has nobody called you? It's cancelled this week." So that was our first one. So everyone had turned up and it cancelled. The second one we went to go to, the tutor, I'd call it a tutor, whatever she is, midwife or whatever they are. She was sick.
Oh, God.
So we turned up again. We turned up to both and had none at all. Wow. So it was more wing it and let's see how it goes.
Did you do anything? Did you Google stuff? Did you try and find out what to expect? No. Were you all right with that? Were you both all right with that?
Yeah. So Carl is quite laid back. Although that's what I always tell this story. When they first gave him to me, so Carly had a C-section, and when they after that they give us the baby, and she's shattered, like laying down knackered, and they give me this child, and they go, right, you need to feed this kid. I'm like, how do you feed a kid? I had no idea. So I was like, it was at that moment I was like, I wish I'd gone to those. I wish we had those on today classes.
Yeah. You'd have forgotten it all anyway.
Shamelessly had to walk out. Excuse me, can you show me what I need to do, please?
To be fair, there's so many things in play. No matter what you learn at antenatal, you don't get given an instruction manual. We don't get told anything. We were wondering about after we had ours, and we didn't know what to do. We were asking for help. We were worried if we were being silly, asking stupid questions and stuff. It's a natural thing, but it's just a little bit more heightened because you didn't get into your antenatal, so you had more going on in your head.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How much did she weigh?
Oh God, you've put me on the spot now. My wife's in the other room. She may shout at me if I get this wrong. I think it was like £7.8, something like that.
The only reason I asked that is that I remember, friends and family having kids before me, and they come around, they have these conversations about the kid. They go, "Oh yeah, he weighed this, he weighed that," and I used to be like, how do you remember that? Like, why on earth would you remember that? I remember it. It's like my PIN number now. Like I know that number. Yeah, it's in my head.
I'm just rubbish with numbers and dates and time, and I'm a bit like, I don't know what it is because I never used to be like that. But I guess what I've done in my head subconsciously is think it's not that important. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And some people find it really important, and that's fine. And I don't understand the conversations that people have with it. Like, I've been involved in all these conversations. Oh, so-and-so was £10 big baby. Oh, it must have hurt. It's like, I don't really care. Like, our baby came out. She was quite small. She was fine. She was due. It was cool. No incubator needed. What more do you need to know about the weight? It's like, I don't know what to tell you. No, I've probably got that wrong. But she was fine.
It's one of those parenting conversations, isn't it? Where it's like, oh, how much did you're exactly right. Oh, yeah, well, that was a big one. Must have hurt, like you said. It's almost like the default conversation that parents seem to have.
Yeah, it's a nothing one, isn't it? It's just like an icebreaker. So I guess my icebreaker is I've got no idea. Please ask my wife. That's my icebreaker. I've got that wrong somewhere. I definitely have.
So how does life change those first 4 weeks? What's that like?
Yeah, it was shocking. It was kind of like it does. I say this a lot, but the whole having a baby changes your life. Kind of like metaphor, whatever you want to call it. It really does. Like from day one, it completely changes everything about your life. So we had a pretty complicated traumatic birth, and coming home afterwards, my wife was still quite poorly, quite heavy migraines, not very well and stuff. So I had an extra week paternity kind of booked in, like an annual leave week. So I had 3 weeks off, and I'm ever so grateful I did, because that first week, especially, or most of that first week, I was kind of trying to run around and do everything, which is great. And I remember it fondly, and I remember it proudly that I, just stepped in and just cracked on. But I mean, the fear of it all, like everything, like just everything was scary. Like, am I going to break this baby? Do you know what I mean? Like, is there something wrong with the way I'm holding her? Is there something wrong with the way I'm feeding her? What do we do next? Why does it smell like this? Do I need to wash her? Like Google just got a hammering. Do you know what I mean? But no, do you know what? I always look back fondly. I do look back fondly. It was one of those situations where it was all over the place. It was a bit crazy. It was tiring. But I guess, again, I've probably compartmentalized how tough it was to a point where I can just look back and just think it was ace. It was really nice. All I kind of remember actually was the 3 weeks coming to an end, going back to work and just feeling like massively low that I was going back to work and having to leave my wife on her own with my daughter. Not because I didn't think she would be fine, because I absolutely did think she would be fine. It was more a case I just didn't want to go. I just wanted to spend every day with them. Do you know what I mean? But then in the same breath, I was like, I need a break, and this is my break going back to work. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It was tricky, but I like the first few weeks. Yeah, sure.
I was going to ask you, do you think the 2 weeks, I know you had an extra week, but do you think that is enough for dads?
No, I love the fact that quite a lot of companies, and obviously there's legislation put in place now where companies can offer shared maternity, so that dads can have the same amount as the mums. But I also think that there is a little bit of extra leeway needed. There's an expectation. There's a lot of issues with regards to mums needing more time off anyway. So like, if you had a shared maternity, would that be fair on the mum? You know what I mean? So there's an element of maybe it just needs to be more generally for men. So I think if I had my own way, or if I had an opportunity to say something to to make change, which ironically I am hopefully getting opportunities to do that in the next few months, years with the work I do. One of the things I'd throw into the mix is that there's some sort of statutory like month or two you could get, like 4 to 8 weeks, because I just think that dads get more value out of that initial bonding than is expected, or than I guess the stigma allows, because scientifically and psychologically it's proven that your baby needs to be around both parents, like physically and psychologically. And if you're doing a job where you're never going to be home, and you go back to that job, you're missing out. Your baby and you as a dad are missing out on a huge chunk of what's important. So I don't think it's enough. I think it needs to be a month or two, definitely. And I think that'd be great for all parties considered. I think the person would come back more rejuvenated, more recharged, going back to work. And I think that you wouldn't have as much worry, I think. Obviously case by case, it'll be different, but I know for a fact that extra week really helped me out. I couldn't imagine going back to work after 2 weeks off with the situation I was in. I had a really panicked going back in that third week. So I think the more time you have, the more secure you are going back to work, which can only benefit everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think it's enough.
No, I think even maybe a staggered reintroduction to going back to work. Maybe not having 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever, but you have your full 2 weeks, and then maybe you go to 3 days or 4 days, and stagger it. So, because one thing that my wife really struggled with was me being there for the first 2 weeks completely, and then I'm gone for 5 days fully.
Yeah.
And then you walk in the door and you can see that she's physically just beat up.
And so, you know what? Adding on to that, like when I came home on those first few days, I felt immediately compelled to sort of just wade in straight away as soon as I come through the door, and almost give my wife a break. And that's not good for us dads. It's not good for the wives either, because it's not a normal balance. So that staggered thing that you suggested would actually work really well. Maybe even if it's even more flexible and you do half days for a few weeks, where you do like 5 days a week, we do half days, and you can manage the cycles of sleeping and eating a bit more for the kid then. I do think it's too hard and fast to just say 2 weeks statutory paternity. I know that businesses and corporations, where they are able to, are more flexible than ever, and I think it's fantastic. But I think when you've got a small business that can't be flexible because they just can't, for productivity and money, they're just going to go, well, statutory, you only get 2 weeks, mate. So do you know what I mean? Like the company I work for now, like I work for a really flexible, lovely company. I'm doing a senior job, but in my contract, it's 2 weeks. Do you know what I mean? So I'd have to, and they probably would be more flexible if I used annual leave. Don't get me wrong, but like it's still in my contract. They're using that because they're a small business. They're using that because they're a small business. They're not going to put in a contract, let's discuss it flexibly, because small businesses need to protect themselves against people who would take the piss. Do you know what I mean? Let's be honest. So something needs to change. Something needs to change for sure. Even if it's like subsidized somehow, subsidized from the government or something. I don't know. So
I read a really interesting report recently about Finland, and have you seen how they manage their paternity?
Yeah, do you know, someone was telling me about this recently. Who was it? Might have been you. I don't know. Somebody was telling me about it offline, about looking into Scandinavian paternity and maternity cover and how they work it generally, but I haven't looked deeply. So hit me with it. Hit me.
Yeah, no. So Finland, one of the most progressive countries in Europe, I think, in terms of equality and how they introduce equality. I think they're the only country in Europe, actually, or not the progressive world. I can't think of it. Yeah. So one of the only country where fathers actually spend more time on average with their children than mothers. Now it's only 8 minutes, but it's still more time. But they had this incentive called Daddy Time, where they introduced this, and it was encouraging. They ran this big PR campaign where it was like dads in construction uniforms pushing prams. It was really trying to break down that stigma of men pushing their kids or looking after their children. And I think this year they go a step further, and I think it's June or sometime around the middle of this year, they introduce into law that each parent gets 7 months paid paternity leave with their children, because they understand that, like you mentioned, the bond, and statistically speaking, the child will do better with both parents in and around them at the same time.
Yeah, 100%. And there's links with all of that, and I'm sure they've done this, research, or they've read the research and thought I'm using that. But there's research out there that shows that links of mental health issues in parents, both parents, postnatal depression, etc., suicide, unfortunately, sorry to bring it down to a dark level, and also broken homes. There's massive links to all of that to do with the first year or 2 years of the perinatal period, basically. So the becoming a father, becoming a mother, and there's loads of factors, but one of the contributing factors is an outdated maternity and paternity system. So they're absolutely right, because of that science behind the fact that you need more time with your kid in that first couple of years for all of you. So I hear it. It's brilliant. I will look into that more, actually, use it as a guide.
Whilst we're on the sort of first couple of months, was it everything that you expected it would be, or not at all?
It's difficult because we had her in, so it was kind of cool. I've gone. No, we're back. We had her in October, and basically it was straight into Christmas. It was, from what I can remember, it was quite smooth, and this is something I kind of annoy my friends with, because my daughter's always been quite good at sleeping, quite good at going through the different stages of growth and, the different sort of periods of change. So what I remember about the first few months really is that apart from being really tired and apart from having quite a lot of trial and error of what will calm her down, soothe her, that kind of thing, the normal things, I can't remember many major issues. And I just remember it being relatively smooth comparatively to what I've heard from other parents. So no, I think the first few months, as much as they are new, I guess on a personal level, it was a bit of a journey, because I had to come to terms quite quickly with regards to the fact that I'd lost control of everything. So, like, from a kind of psyche, mental health point of view, I've always had quite bad control issues. Like, I'm not a control freak where I control people, but I have to have quite a tight control on everything around me and know what's happening next and think quite methodically and logically about everything. And of course, a baby, a human being, you can't control anything. You don't know what's going to happen next about everything. So that was a big issue. And I had to really get used to that. But the thing that I always talk about, actually, when people talk to me about those first few months and when they worry about that same thing that I do, because it's actually quite a common thing that men go through, that loss of control, lack of control. I say to them, look, the way I dealt with it was I grasped control of what I could control. So I looked at how I could help, how I could support my wife, how I could do things for the baby, and how I could control the house, and how I could support her in other ways, support my wife and my daughter in other ways, and basically be in control of what I can control the controllables, And if I can't control something, don't dwell on it, don't deal with it, just actually almost sit back and laugh a little bit that, this is just, I can't read this baby's mind, man, just let her be her. And it's stressful, it's hard, it's tiring, and you get all the natural human instincts of this is just driving me crackers, but we're adaptable, and you've just got to try and focus, I guess. Focus is a big thing. Focus on the positives, focus on the controllables. And I'm not kind of trying to be quite sort of arrogant about it. I'm actually more putting a disclaimer out there, really, that I didn't really suffer. I kind of felt like I did quite well, and I'm happy and proud of it, in a sense of I know full well I could have completely capitulated and been like, the first few months were a fucking nightmare. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't. It went pretty smooth. It was good. So I'm happy.
Did you get any advice from parents or people that you knew?
Yeah, I did. And this is a bit of a bane in my life, actually, because I'm out of my group of mates, I was the last one to have kids, really.
Right.
So all my mates were saying things before I had my daughter. They were saying things like, mate, you're going to lose a lot of sleep. Oh, mate, it's hard work. You really need to buckle in, mate. It's going to be really tough. All the sort of standard things, right?
Yeah.
And my go-to reaction to that is, I'll be all right, mate. I'll be cool. I think you're overthinking it, mate. You're being too extreme. And if I could go back in time, and I have said this to a few of my mates, if I could go back in time, I would listen, and I would think, okay, you know better than me. I don't know this. What you're saying might be true. It might actually be true. Because, it was a rude awakening. And I was sat there at times, and I'm sat there and I'm going, they were so right. Like, they were really right. This is difficult. But no, we've got a really good network of friends. I think I've got some really close friends, and I think, every now and then I do lean on them and ask them questions of what do they do. But I think something I've figured out quite quickly with parenthood is that every kid is different and every parent is different. So it really is take every bit of advice, take every bit of Googling with a pinch of salt, and trial and error, and work it out what's best for your son or daughter. Because if you listen and put pay a lot of attention to everybody else's opinion, before you know it, you're doing things that are quite wrong for your son or daughter. So yeah, we learned that quite quickly, which is good as well.
So she's 2 now, is that right? 3 in October.
Yeah, 3 in October. Yeah.
Yeah. Started nursery or not gone to nursery?
Yeah, she's in a childminders, and we're priming her for like a preschool kind of thing in January 2022. So she's already got a place because we're sad and we organised it quite early. And even the manager of the place was like, "You're the first person to book a place, so it's all good. You're in." And I'm like, okay. I thought I was being good, but clearly I'm sad. So yeah, she's cool. She enjoys it. She loves childminders. So yeah, it's good.
So, John, what starts your journey on the whole mental health support? Because obviously that's where we became connected. Like, I found your page, saw what you was doing. I'll put the links into to your Instagram on here as well, so people can check it out, because there is some really good reviews on there as well. But yeah, what started you on that journey?
Yeah, so 2019, so a couple of years ago now, a year and a bit ago, it was World Mental Health Day. It was October, so it was just before my daughter's first birthday, I think. Yeah. I was sat there and I was skimming through Instagram, and I was kind of like, there's some really great stuff out there. You know, I'm a peer-to-peer counsellor, mental health first aider, and I'm kind of switched on and kind of interested in mental health generally. So I really wanted to see what was out there on World Mental Health Day for Men, you know, and just share some nice posts and stuff like that. And I'm scanning through, and I think it's really great what people are doing. There's a lot of great stuff out there for men, and I thought, this is good, this is nice. But there was just something missing for dads. Like, I just kind of thought to myself, like, there's a gap. Like, I work in marketing, and it wasn't like there's a gap, I can sell something. It was more like there's a gap. Why? Like, why aren't we talking about this? Like, it's a big deal being a dad. So before I started the page, I decided to do a bit of research around kind of what's out there. So, you know, if I struggled, I put myself in the shoes of someone who really struggled, you know, postnatal depression, really serious mental health issues, straight away becoming a dad. And I really struggled to find stuff. I really struggled to find anything. The NHS have some resources, they have some stuff out there, but there's not a great deal, and it's not easy to find. Then there was this big research project that I found, which is really cool, but also that's like a research project. It's not publicized, it's not marketed. And then there was a couple of people campaigning, like just a handful of people, and they weren't really marketing themselves very well either. So what I thought to myself was, I want to start a page, and I want to start one that kind of offers an opportunity to signpost kind of to any dads that might be struggling what is out there, and also kind of what is out there from a men's mental health point of view. So kind of bring it full circle and go, right, if you're a dad and you're struggling, what about this stuff that's out there anyway that'll just help you as a man, because that'll help you as a dad, you know, the intrinsic sort of link. So I started as a signposting page, and it was faceless. It was private almost, you know, it was open, but it was private. I wasn't pushing it, and I was just putting loads of resources out there. And then, lockdown hit in 2020, and I sat there and I thought, this isn't really going anywhere. Nothing's really happening. I need to network. I need to connect with people. I need to put a face behind it. I need to become more relatable with the account. So I sucked up my pride a little bit, really, and just started talking about me, started doing videos, started talking about my ups and downs as a parent, started being really, really vulnerable on there, because, you know, honesty is the best way to connect to people and show that people are, to show that you're just the same as everybody else, and that actually they will then acknowledge that they're having issues and probably seek out support. And then, it's just blown up from there. So now it's sort of developed into a lot more than what it was. I have regular lives now with different people who tell their stories and talk about their situations they've been in with regards to parenthood, with regards to being a dad, with regards to helping dads. You know, I've had psychologists on there. I've had people who haven't had kids. I've had mothers who I had a lady on last week, actually, Helen, who's massively inspirational because she lost her husband to suicide because of basically everything we've been talking about, a lack of support for his mental health. So she's really inspirational. She's really leading the fight almost to try and change all these policies that are out there. and yeah, basically it's opened doors to those kinds of things. So now I'm involved in a lot of different groups and alliances that are trying to force change in government. I've had my eyes opened up to a lot of different accounts that are doing lots of similar things to myself, which we're all networking and trying to pull together. I've also inspired accounts, which sounds weird saying it, and I don't mean it in a way of like, I'm something special. It's more a case of people have seen what I'm doing and want to do something slightly different to help what I'm doing, which I think is amazing because I can't do it all the time. It's not my day job. And I try and just do a couple of things a week, really. I've been on a million podcasts, and this is one of the great ones that I've been on. Thank you for inviting me on. I've been invited to talk at I've done articles. There's a magazine out tomorrow that I've done an article in about becoming a father. It's called Open Door Men's Mag. That's kind of a community I'm part of now, and I've written an article about becoming a dad there, about my journey becoming a dad there. I've been asked to do loads of stuff locally as well. So now I'm sort of, and this is kind of the next step. I've told you about this obviously, but I'm opening a community interest company in my area in Lincolnshire to sort of help men's mental health generally, and a big part of that will be dads. But yeah, it's just blown up from there, really. It's one of those situations, I think, that in all honesty, obviously in social media, the more you post and the more decent content you create, the more you're going to grow. But I don't think I've done a lot to do that. I think what's happened is people have realized how important this is and really pushed it out, and actually pushed me to push it out. I've had a lot of people come to me and say, this is great what you're doing. You speak so well. You speak so honest. You know things that we don't know. You're opening my eyes to different things. Keep doing it. Don't stop. And that's inspiring enough for me to sort of create that content. I could drop this anytime, and I have a day job. I have a life, and I could easily drop it, and I would if I had to, but I would feel immensely distraught that there would be a big gap there where I've created this space, and it's a safe space. I have people messaging me all the time just asking for advice, and around the world. I had a guy messaging me from America the other week, a really lovely guy actually. He lost his son last year. He's got two kids, but he lost his son last year, so he did have three, and he was really, really struggling, bless him, and he had some real major grief. I mean, I can't even fathom how he would feel, because it's shocking to think how I would feel, if I lost my daughter. And all I could do to him was say, look, I'm always here. Just talk to me, open up, tell me everything you're feeling. It'll make you feel better to do so. Have you reached out to local support services where you are, and just give him advice. And I touch base with him every now and then. He has messaged saying thank you, but he also reminds me regularly that he's just really struggling. And there's times where you just really can't make change. But this is where I'm not the professional. What I am is pushing the professionals to do more to help these people. So yeah, I mean, that's me. That's a real roundabout way of explaining it all now, but that's what I'm doing. So it's great.
Why do you think there is a lack of support for men's mental health?
There's loads of issues. I could talk about them all day, but it's huge. It's the cultural, societal, historical issues that are in play. There's a massive stigma around men's mental health generally. There still is, despite the fact that when we were kids, when our dads were kids, arguably it was exactly the same as it is now, which just seems so wrong because things change so fast. So much has changed in 20 years for me personally, and the way our lives are. Why hasn't something like this changed? So that's the first thing. The stigma is there that we shouldn't open up, that we shouldn't show our vulnerabilities, that actually we're expected and almost kind of forced to be that stoic, hard-faced, completely just keep calm and carry on, horrendous, stiff upper lip British nature. It's wank. Sorry, I'm sorry to swear, but it's horrible. Basically,
it's after the watershed. You're all right.
Good. Just
a minute.
A minute. Oh, so I swore earlier, didn't I? Oh God, I'm really sorry. Sorry, anyone watching that's offended by swears. No, basically, I just feel like those stigmas are in place still. There are stigmas being broken down, but there are still generational issues. So you're talking about, our grandparents, our great grandparents, our parents. And within those sort of generations, you've got percentages, what I sort of talk about, and the percentages are very high in those generations of people who really can't understand the emotional spectrum of a human being from a man's point of view. It's as simple as that. You know, we're not talking about dads now. We're not talking about specific mental health problems. We're talking about actual access to your emotions. And before I got into this journey, before I started realizing my own mental health problems, I was the same. I was mid-20s, late 20s, and I was like, this is not a thing. People don't get depressed. They're just sad time wasters. People don't get anxious. They just worry too much because they overthink. Well, now I know that's absolute bollocks. And now I know that, like, actually, there's so much science and so much evidence that mental health is so much more important than it used to be. Or should I say that it's always been as important as it's not been made out to be. Yeah. So, you know, you see a lot of this stuff now. Oh, mental health is just as important as physical health. Mental health is more important than physical health. Like, there are massive studies to show someone with a broken leg, right? That broken leg will heal better if they're a happier person. Like, there's actual physical science behind that. Like, and I'm talking on real basic levels now to sort of reach out to as many people as possible when I'm saying this, but that's true. You know, there's so really just circling back a little bit because I'm going off on one now. It's the beer. It's the beer. No, basically, there's just too many shields in play to allow men to really open up and be themselves. And what I find when I do meet people who open up, and what I find when I do meet people who are engaging that part of their kind of brain, really, it is your brain, but also your mind, I guess, if you want to talk spiritually. What I find is that they almost immediately feel guilty that they haven't felt like that already, that it's actually something that they've just imposed on themselves. And, you know, as soon as I hear that, the first thing I say is that you've got absolutely no reason to feel guilty or feel any shame for the way you were previously. That is anything else that's happened to you, your nature, your cultural upbringing, whatever it is, that did that to you. It wasn't you. Like, you didn't choose to be that person. I didn't choose to be that person. I beat myself up daily about that. So I'm the same as these people. Like, I beat myself up about the way I used to be all the time. But I know, and I try and remind myself, that wasn't my fault. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's so difficult. But there are massive shifts happening. There are massive sort of stigma cultures that are being reframed and changed. And the word stigma itself should be changed, because honestly, the stigma nowadays in certain realms is the other way. You know, we're very positive about it and we're very open about it. And that is a stigma. And people hate that stigma sometimes. And it's like, you know, you can't please everybody. But for me, I talk about reframing thoughts and feelings about a lot of things a lot. And I really do think that that's just at the bottom of it all. We really just need to normalize the wording, normalize the way we feel about it all. And actually what that'll produce is internal change and change around you, and everybody else will change. And hopefully everybody will start to open up more and just be happier. And yeah, I think I've got somewhere in the end with that.
My own thoughts echo yours, really, in as much as I had the same thought as you. As in, I used to hear people talk about depression and the same feelings, thinking, "Oh, they're just miserable." Like, you know, get over it. That was my mentality, and really only up until very recently have I started to really understand. Actually, there's something to this, because. You know, this last lockdown, I found myself some days thinking, I feel really low, and there's no reason whatsoever for me to be miserable at all. Like, I've got the perfect life, I've got the perfect wife, I've got the perfect son, I've got my own business, we're doing really well. What have I got to be miserable for? But some days, I can't get out of bed. You know, I want to sleep, and I can't shake the funk. And it wasn't until recently where I'm like, actually, this is everything that I've been talking down over the past 30 years, probably.
Yeah. And you know, it's that realization that's a massive step. Like, you know, just touching on like those tiny little things you were saying there. Like, there's so many ways that you could portray that. So, like, your feelings in the morning where you're depressed and you don't want to get out of bed, or sorry, actually the best way of describing it is, when you said you don't know why you feel low, right?
Yeah.
There's one of two things happening. It's either chemicals, like actual scientific chemicals making you feel low, which you have no control over, but you can do things to try and change, or it's a cultural surrounding, like cloud. Like this is the other way that people look at things, and this is what lockdown does to people. Like it's done it to me. I have fought it long enough, but at times I'm sat here and I'm like, I know that everything's great. I know that I've still got my job. I know that I'm sat here with the two people, like you've just said. I know that I've got a lovely house. I know that I like my environment. And I know that I'm, as soon as I do go out of the house and I have to socially interact with people, I know I'm going to hate it immediately. But I still want to do it. And I want to do it because the cloud is hanging over me and it's bringing me down. And it's just the cloud of, it's funny. Somebody spoke to me the other day, and I don't know whether I believe in this, but I think it's a lovely analogy. When stuff like this happens, so when pandemics happen and there's this big, people talk about this mental health pandemic and a lot of people struggling. One of the kind of spiritual guys that I really know, and they talk about shamanic sort of things that they do and all this kind of thing. He just really briefly said to me, when you're feeling down and you can't really understand it, maybe it's because a lot of people are, without realizing it, they're sending a lot of negative energy up into the clouds, and then it's raining down on you. And you can't really help that. Like, it's not about interacting with negative people. It's actually about the fact that, generally speaking, there's a vibe. There's a vibe out there that's just negative. Yeah. And actually, that's a thing. People talk about like, oh, I've got a vibe from someone. That's actual science. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's giving you a vibe. That's an actual thing. That's pheromones. That's chemicals. Those kinds of things. You
feel that sometimes when you walk into a room and you think, bloody hell, there's a negativity in here.
Yeah. Honestly, those are actual things that people need to get their head around. Like, it's so easy to just go, that's not real. That's not real. Like I'm now more open-minded than I've ever been, to a point where if someone can show me something and explain what something is, I will happily, interject it into my brain and think that's quite a cool thing. But at the same time, if somebody can't show me it and it's just the way they feel, I'm also open-minded enough to go, okay, so you feel that way. I mean, there must be some truth in it because you feel that way, but I just can't see it for myself. I'm still a bit cynical about it. So, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of like just kind of understanding that, we're all in that boat together. It's like, whatever makes it work for you. That's the way I feel. And yeah, man, the chemical thing, like, I could go on for days about it. I've met so many scientists. I used to work in science. I used to be a marketer for science. And, you speak to social scientists and they could talk to you so much about the chemicals in play. When people say stupid phrases like, it's tense in here. Well, it's tense because actually all the chemicals that are coming off people's head because they're actually tense and angry. You know what I mean? Like, that's an actual thing. You're feeling that physically. It's mad. Yeah. It's so cool. But yeah, going off on one a bit.
So if anybody is watching this and feeling like they do need some help and support, what would you recommend that they do?
It really does depend on, I guess, kind of what kind of thing they're feeling. But I guess a massive first step from anyone's point of view, whether you're a man, woman, whatever, predominantly more men, I think, because we do struggle to, as we've just outlined ourselves, we do struggle to accept that things are happening like that.
Yeah.
My first bit of advice would be to reach out and talk to someone. And, everybody talks about this. Everybody says, oh, talk to someone, go and speak to your GP, go and talk to your loved ones, whatever. And because people talk about it so much, people think it doesn't mean anything. It loses its meaning. I can't sort of word this strong enough to say it can genuinely save your life and change your life just to simply talk to someone, whether it's for 10 seconds or for 10 minutes. And when I say someone, I don't prescribe to the whole tell your best friend, tell your partner. That can work for some people, and it's the only way it'll work for some people because it's the only person that they trust not to judge them if they're struggling and worried that they will judge them and what they're going to say.
Yeah.
But some people have this barrier, and I had this barrier. So this is where I come from with this angle. I have this barrier where if I told my loved ones, my family, my friends, my partner, what was going on in my head, I had this fear. I still have this fear at times, but I had this fear that if I tell them, they'll run away, they'll leave me, they'll want anything to do with me, they'll think I'm a psychopath, right? And that is completely natural. So what you do then is you find a neutral. You find somebody who doesn't know you. You find somebody who will be able to listen and will want to listen. And those are actually much more available than you think. There's people like myself, there's advocates online, there's so many different men's mental health advocates that are available in different realms that just might relate to what you feel in their content. Send them a DM. If they're a decent person, and there are a lot of decent people in this realm, they will reply to you and try and help you. But actually, your GP and the services in your local area are set up to do this. So it is a case of, I know it's daunting to make that step. Bloody hell, it was daunting for me. Like, I found it really difficult to go and see my GP. I found it immensely difficult to actually fill out a self-referral form for counselling once. And this is after I'd already started my journey. So I'd already started to learn about all the stuff. I agreed with it all. And then it came to a point where I realised I needed counselling again. And there was this underlying fear that I was almost giving up. Like, I was thinking to myself, I can't win this. I have to fill out this form, and this is like an admission that I'm going to lose to fill out this form. And really, it's the complete fucking opposite. It was me basically saying, I need some help because I'm struggling. That's all it is. So there's so many different ways. I mean, most areas, just to sort of get a bit more sort of technical about it, most areas in the NHS have free counselling services that are available to everybody. Some of them have long waiting lists, I'm not going to lie, but some of them also have community services where peer-to-peer groups can get involved and speak to you about certain things and just meet up with you and go for a walk and listen to you. Social media can be horrific, don't get me wrong, in lots of different ways, but there are some amazing groups out there. There are some localized and national groups where you can just simply go and talk or listen on social media in a private manner. I mean, there's a new feature actually on Facebook, which I've noticed recently, where if you're part of some sort of group which is in this sort of realm, you know, a welcoming group where you can talk and sort of outline your feelings or listen to people, there's a new feature where you don't have to do it with your name anymore. You can do it anonymously. So you can actually send a message to an admin and they will post your message anonymously for people to feed back and give you peer-to-peer support. Anonymously, no one needs to know your name. No one needs to know who you are. A lot of people still worry, and there's that stigma there that if they post something on Facebook or they're involved in something like this, it can damage their careers and stuff, you know, and things like that. So it's one of those situations where if you don't want that to damage something that's close to your heart, your family, your reputation, your career, whatever, it shouldn't do, first of all. But if you feel that way, there's anonymous ways of doing it. And, you know, if you are really, 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 really struggling and all of those things don't work, you've got some great phone lines and text lines now. One of them that I really, really champion actually is called Shout. I don't know if you've heard of Shout, but Shout is a text format line. So don't forget because they're great, but you know, when you think of like Samaritans and Mind and all these great charities that you can call up and get feedback over the phone and talk to people over the phone, people sometimes don't feel confident enough to ring someone and say, I'm struggling. This service, Shout, is a text service, completely free, and it's manned by counsellors, by, you know, certified professional counsellors. You text them, you text the word Shout to a number. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's Googleable. You can find it quite easy. It's a 5-digit number. It's really easy to remember. In fact, I'll have a look now while we're on here. But basically, you text this number and you get a text immediately to say, you know, how can I help you kind of thing. You kind of set up straight away. It's 85258. So 85258 is the number. You text, like I say, you text Shout, you get an answer straight away, you get counselling straight away, 24/7. So, you know, all of this I've just said, if all of it sounds too daunting, just send a text, have a chat.
And that is such a good service, because I know people that will struggle quietly because they don't want to pick up the phone and openly talk about their issues and the struggles that they're going through. So the fact that there's a service there where, like you say, you can be behind a text message, because some people feel much more comfortable like that, right?
Yeah, and it works, and it's a nature. You're normal. Don't ever think that you're that you're a shit person because you have to hide behind a text. That's a normal thing. Like, don't worry about that. I think the other thing you said there, you said people who feel like they can't talk about it. Actually, it's really difficult that first time to talk about it. You might not just go blur and it all come out. It might be a really hard period of breaking through that wall. But I'll tell you something from experience. I had 2 or 3 sessions of counselling before I really did start to sort of get into things. And it is like you've smashing down a dam and the water's just flying through. Do you know what I mean? It's like there comes a point where it becomes so much easier. That's the point I'm trying to make. Like, making that first step is so hard. Making the second step is still hard. Making the third step might be quite hard, but it gets easier. And there comes a point where it's really easy because it just clicks and you're like, this is it. This is how easy it is now. I can talk about this. I mean, just to sort of, again, relate it to me, because I try and relate everything I'm talking about to me, I still find it really, really, really difficult to talk about certain things. I was on a podcast last night. It was actually with a really great friend of mine, actually, who I've developed a really good friendship with, but he's got a huge podcast and he's never got me on as a guest, and I always wind him up about it, but he got me on finally last night. And we were talking and we got really deep, and I actually started talking about my family and my relationships with my family. And I found it really hard to articulate what I was saying, and I almost started crying. So there's things there that I really still struggle to talk about. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we are all human. We all might find it difficult to talk about things at different times. I'm sure you find it difficult to talk about things at different times. There's nothing wrong with it.
I almost have this guilt because I've had that mindset for so long where I've just dismissed anyone that's felt bad or upset. Like you said, just get over it.
Yeah.
I've still got friends where if I said, listen, mate, I'm really struggling with this, they just say, fucking grow up. That's just the way some people are. So
but that's the culture thing I was talking about.
Yeah,
that's the culture, isn't it? We're all ingrained like that. I was listening to something the other day, actually. This is really funny, actually. Just lighten the mood a little bit. On Jonathan Ross the other day, I don't know if you saw it a few weeks ago. Russell Kane was on it, and he was on with Tyson Fury. And basically, Tyson Fury's there, he's talking about his mental health problems, he's talking about how he got through them. And Russell Kane told this little story about something he used to do in a sketch in his comedy shows, where he used to be like, isn't it weird how women in a WhatsApp group, if something happens to one of the women in a WhatsApp group, like they break a nail, they all rally round, they get the teas in, let's go round Sandra's and let's all have a bit of fun and all like let's bring them back up because we don't want them to sink into that depression. They all rally around each other. On a blokes group, if someone sort of intimates that something's sort of troubling them a little bit, I'm feeling a bit low today. Blokes group is like, oh, whatever, mate, you're a fucking idiot, grow up.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are we doing that? Do you know what I mean? Like that whole sketch blew my mind because that's so true. Like, I have groups like that. Yeah. Like, and people are opening up a lot more, and those groups are starting to drop them barriers a bit. If anything, this pandemic's helped that because people are realizing that they can talk and should talk more. But no, I totally get it. It's so hard, and there's so many people just who struggle. So.
Well, there was a report recently that showed 10 million people in the UK are going to need new or extra support for mental health due to this pandemic. So it's becoming more and more. Yeah, it's becoming more and more mainstream, I guess is the right word for it. So people will be. People are going to have to accept. People like me, who just dismissed it, are now starting to experiencing problems. Are going to have to start accepting that actually this is a real thing, and people do need support.
It's amazing that's gone mainstream. But the whole phrase "it's gone mainstream" it's almost pathetic, isn't it? Really, because like I said at the start of my rant, mental health actually scientifically is more important than physical health. Yeah. Like going back to my hypnobirthing story about my wife, like the stuff that we learned in hypnobirth and antenatal, whilst we couldn't always put it all into practice, what you learn in hypnobirthing is that your mind has more power than your body. So like when you're giving birth, there are certain things that you can do within your mind and control within your mind, which will create less pain, which will create less worries and issues and problems. And okay, look, it's not 100%. Every single person is different. But the practices are there, and there's science behind it that your mind has more control over the physicality of your body than you'll ever know. It's more a case of, let's accept that this is really important rather than being a second thought or an afterthought. Because, you know, if someone falls over in the road and scuffs their knee, everybody jumps around them. But if someone, you know, if someone who you're really close to is having a problem, you know, and you actually have the capacity and the space to give them some time and listen to them, why don't we do it naturally? Why don't we do it naturally? Why don't we ask them naturally? It's such a shame. Such a shame it has to become mainstream to be able to do it. You know, it's mad.
Are you optimistic for the future?
Rose, are we back?
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying, are you sort of optimistic for the future of things, and are you hopeful or expecting that things are going to change?
Well, after the pandemic,
well, I just think that society's response to men's mental health more than anything. Are you optimistic that there's a change happening within that?
I think I've got to be. I think I'm trying to be, but I have days that I can't get away from the realist in me. That, you know, what you said there was absolutely true. The 10 million people who are struggling, that's going to be a long-term thing. That's not going to be overnight. You know, a bit of funding thrown at it because of the pandemic. When it's over, let's throw some money at it, and then everybody's cured. I think, if I'm brutally honest, there'll be a massive dip. There'll be a massive dip where a lot of people, you know, suicide rates will continue to rise after the pandemic. As horrible as it sounds, they will. I think that mental health referrals will continue to rise. I think that more men will be, so this is the good thing about the negative, more men will be admitted and have problems officially.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because there's this unknown stat that never gets posted because it's not really a stat. But when we talk about 75% of suicides being men, that's a stat that is like hard and fast. But when you look at things like depression, and you look at things like postnatal depression, or you look at things like anxiety, and you say, well, what's the split of men and women that have been diagnosed with this? It's always more women than men.
Yeah.
But you can guarantee that there's more men that are suffering that aren't there. And actually, if you're experienced in this, or you experience it on a level of reality of day to day, so if you have these problems and you're aware of people who have these problems and you can see it, so like me and like other people who are aware of it, you know, I sit there sometimes in groups of my friends and I think 3 out of them 5 have got deep anxiety. They're showing so many symptoms of their anxiety. They're not diagnosed. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I just think that what this will show, unfortunately, because it'll force them to go and get help, it'll show that more men have more mental health problems than we all thought. Yeah. And hopefully it'll lead to both sexes at the back end of this in a few years' time. All our mental health will be on and up, because you know, it'll force governments, not just ours, it'll force governments into funding this properly. It'll force them into making change to policies and to medications, and to create more services and to fund more services, so that we can all help each other. You know, it's a slippery slope when they don't do it, because before you know it, you know, we're a raging sort of beast that can sort of fight back a little bit. So I mean, that's going off on a different tangent altogether, but I really do think that eventually there'll be a positive. Yeah, I do think there will be a positive there.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, the suicide stats for me I lost a very good friend of mine to suicide when we were 21.
Jeez.
You know, it was crippling at the time. It was one of the worst things I've ever been through. And you know, the fact that 125 people a week still kill themselves and you know, and rising is a frightening stat. I mean, I'm raising money for Calm this year. We mentioned this previously, and I was just watching a video of theirs where I may have made this number up, but it was very similar. 400,000 people called their helpline last year, and they say that they stopped 488 people killing themselves. So the work that they're doing over there is just phenomenal. I know you mentioned that you've raised some money for them in the past.
Yeah, I've done a few fundraisers for it. I think they're amazing what Calm are doing. So if anybody listening or watching this doesn't know what Calm are, it's Campaign Against Living Miserably. And Campaign Against Living Miserably stands for what it is. They are a massive campaign to stop people from living miserably to the point where they see no other option. Suicide needs a makeover because I think people still feel that suicide is this horrific, selfish thing. And I did up until a few years ago. I'm guessing that by the fact that you've been touched by it, you had kind of your own education of it, unfortunately, which I'm sorry you had to go through. But from my point of view, up until very, very recently, a few years ago, I very much thought that anyone committing suicide was only thinking about themselves and didn't think about everybody who they'd leave behind, etc., etc. All the old stereotypes.
Yeah.
In actual fact, it's the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. They think they're doing everyone a favor. They think that they are helping everyone. Yeah, that they're eradicating a problem by getting rid of themselves. And that is the ultimate extreme. It is the ultimate extreme. It's the only end point where everything else has failed them. And in a lot of suicide cases, nothing has even been attempted. Nothing has been attempted to help because of lots of factors. Without knowing the stats, there are lots of different reasons. And in some cases, it's going back to what we were saying about the societal, cultural problems of men and actually just not really ever having any iota of strength to even seek help, and it only being the only way out. Suicide's horrendous, but it needs a makeover. The whole phrase "commit suicide," do you know that comes from Victorian crime? That's an actual crime. People used to commit suicide, and their families would have fines because they committed suicide. Wow. It's horrendous. It shouldn't even be called that. That's why you hear now quite a lot in the press. You hear that people say they died by suicide, or they were their family is affected by suicide, and someone was killed by suicide. Because suicide essentially is a psychological problem. It's a psychological output. It's not a it's a disease. It's something that is a disease that kills people. It's like cancer. It's not an action. It's not a committing. You don't make a problem out of it. It's horrendous. So a sour tone. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like you have had many messages from men who have been through it. Some that have tried to commit suicide. In fact, got one guy on tomorrow night who's going to talk about that, and he tried to take his own life during the first lockdown. So it's a very real problem that we need to highlight, and like you say, maybe just changing the word in that commit is just changing that initially to something different.
It's a massive start, and I think Calm do a lot of that. They try and a lot of their marketing, Calm's marketing, is around highlighting why people do it and why it gets to that stage. And if we can all normalize it, we don't want to normalize it to a point where it's an acceptable thing. What we want to do is we want to normalize it to a point where we understand that we're all human and we're all capable of that feeling. I am not ashamed to say this, and it is something that I haven't experienced firsthand until very, very recently. But a few months ago, I had those thoughts. I had horrible thoughts like that about something that happened. And it was a very small incident that just sent me over the edge to a point where I actually thought about crashing my car. And it was a really tough couple of days for me. And I reached out to people and I spoke about it. I reached out to people who I knew had been through it, who I knew had got to that point and actually come back from that ledge, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I shed a lot of tears. I explained why I felt the way I felt. I told my wife, which was really hard. And she understood. She tried to understand as best she can why I felt that way, as much as she didn't agree or think that it was something that I should be feeling. She understood that I can feel it, and that's all we need. That's all anyone needs. That understanding that we're capable of having that darkness. We are human. Accept it. Accept it. The world needs to accept it. Men and women need to accept that all of us, men and women, can feel that way. And when we accept it, we can then make change to help each other. We can then go, okay, you felt that way. I'm sorry you felt that way. Let's look into how I can help you, even if it's something that all you need is just me to listen to you. Do you know what I mean? It's like until you accept it, there's always going to be barriers, and those barriers will push people to that kind of ledge, you know? So there's no better way of really talking about it.
So let's end this on a lighter note.
Yeah, please.
Hopes for the future, John. What family life? What are your hopes for the future? What do you hope for the next couple of years?
Oh, I've got loads, mate. I've got loads. I try and reflect quite positively on the past and build it into the future. So I do think we want another kid, and I do think that we're probably going to start trying for that in the next year or so. My daughter will, my daughter will be. We don't want my daughter to be too old if she does have a brother or sister. You know, we don't want it to be too big of a gap. So that's something in play. I mean, you know, from a day job point of view, I've got lots of plans. You know, there's lots of things happening with my company to grow and to do more. And then from the CIC side, you know, we're about to launch our CIC. It's called Men Talk Links. We're about to launch, and it'll be providing some really great mental health services for men in Lincoln and surrounding villages. And it's hard work putting it all together, but I've got a great team of board of directors that are all doing it for free and helping me for free, which is fantastic. Just basically growing that and doing more of that and expanding on those plans. In the very short term, I'm doing something with Public Health England in March, which I can't talk too much about, but they've invited me to come and be a keynote speaker on a change for father services, basically. So I'm going to sit there and basically tell them that mental health services for fathers needs to change and why, which is daunting, but it should be great. And then just lots of different things like that. Just try and get my messages out there. Keep the lives going. You know, underlying all of this and all the stuff I've been telling you and all the preaching that I've been doing tonight. You know, all of this helps me. All of this helps me on a personal level. Yeah. So to sort of finish this off, like my plans for the future really is to continue to be that selfish person that selflessly wants to help people. You know, because that selfishly, like I do it selfishly because it helps me to help people. So exactly. I want to be selfish. So it's like, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, I've come across people who are like, can't do this, man. It's too selfish. It's like, what? You're helping people. Like, like it doesn't matter that you're helping yourself. Like, you're helping people. It doesn't matter that it's making you better. So, basically, for my own sake, I'm going to continue doing this. So, yeah.
And where can people? Like I said, I will put the links in the description on the podcast and on YouTube. But where can people find you?
Yeah, so the MH Support for Dads page is on Instagram. That's MH Support 4 Dads. So just trying to be trendy and down with the kids, but it's MH Support for Dads. You can find me on Instagram. Obviously, I post a lot on there, so it's probably the best place to find me. But yeah, the CIC, to be honest, it's pointless giving you the links right now because they're all in transit to sort of get made, so they're being behind the scenes. But there'll be a website, there'll be a Facebook, so keep an eye out for that if you're in the Lincolnshire area, because there'll be some great stuff happening locally for that as well. But Instagram's the best place to find me really at the minute. It's probably the best place for me as well.
Brilliant. Well, John, listen, it's been brilliant speaking to you. Thanks for coming on, and
thanks for having me.
Good luck with everything that you're doing, and hopefully you can make some change. Hopefully we can help. Both of us can help at least one person moving forward.
Yeah, that's all it's about, isn't it? It's all it's about, and keep doing what you do, man. You know, like the podcast and all this is all fantastic. You know, lighthearted, just trying to be as lighthearted as possible. Have a beer, let's chat. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for getting the message out there and talking more and getting people to talk more, man. You know, we need more people like you doing it. We need more people to offer those avenues for people to talk, man.
I appreciate it. Fab. All right, John. Good speaking to you.
Yeah, nice to see you, mate. Take it easy. We'll definitely do more in the future.
Yeah, 100%.